The Jesuits indeed have lifted up their immigrant charges and from oppressive poverty have helped to change the face of Boston in a Catholic emancipation. And we are all very, very proud of that.
For 150 years, BC High has provided a Jesuit Catholic education to young men of all walks of life from all over Greater Boston. From its inception in 1863, BC High has been a gateway for aspiring boys, many the sons of immigrant Catholic families, to find and earn their rightful place in American society. The school's beginning was yet another step in the blessed work of Jesuit missionaries who had in earlier centuries established schools all over the world to educate rich and poor alike. When Father John McElroy arrived in Boston at the age of 65, he did so with the history of reaching out to the marginalized and dispossessed. An immigrant himself, he had earlier started an orphanage in Washington, later a literary institute for girls, and in Maryland, despite the local laws, a school for African Americans. In Boston, McElroy encountered a city suffering from the depredations of a horrible war, a city swelling with multitudes of Catholic Irish fleeing famine and eviction in their own country, a city in the grip of nativist anti-Catholic sentiment. Along with Bishop Benedict Joseph Fenwick, himself a Jesuit, and his successor as Bishop of Boston, John Fitzpatrick, McElroy shared the vision of a school in Boston that would serve both the civic and spiritual needs of the diocese. After years of opposition from know-nothings in the city, and spurred on by the availability of land in the South End, McElroy finally procured a site for the school and a charter was granted in 1863. Revolutionary for its time, the school's charter stated that the profession of religion will not be a necessary condition for admission to the college. At no point in the school's history did its leaders exercise greater foresight than in its move to Columbia Point. In the years following World War II, taxed by facilities no longer adequate for its burgeoning enrollment and situated in an increasingly depressed part of the city, the school began its search for a new home. In a bold stroke, the president, Father Robert Hewitt, marshaled the school's entire savings to purchase an unlikely parcel of 70 acres in Dorchester on what had previously been a cow pasture and city dump. At the time of the purchase, the only structures on the peninsula were a pumping station dating from 1905 and a one-story wooden barracks built to house Italian prisoners of war. It would take years to realize Father Hewitt's vision, but through the faith in those who saw a better world, the vision slowly became reality. Father Hewitt's visions took its first concrete form with the constructions of McElroy Hall in 1950, followed quickly by Cushing Hall and Dever Auditorium in 1954. However, the school was still fragmented because it lacked a residence for the Jesuit faculty. Loyola Hall met this need when it was completed in 1957. The Science Center, later to be known as Walsh Hall, followed soon after in 1965, made possible by the generosity of 1913 graduate Richard Cardinal Cushing. A mere decade later, the Star Outdoor Athletic Complex of playing and practice fields was completed. In the late 1980s, under the leadership of Father Ray Callahan and a $3 million capital campaign spearheaded by John McNeese, the school crossed another threshold. The 37,000 square foot McNeese Pavilion provided the school for the first time a large enough space in which to gather the entire community. In 1997, the 11,000 square foot Corcoran Library was dedicated, a fully networked study and research center on the first floor of Cushing Hall, housing over 18,000 volumes. In 2005, in a visionary move, BC High constructed McQuillan Hall, a structure which united Dever Gym, Cushing, Loyola, and McElroy halls into a unified campus, including 17,000 square feet of terrazzo floor, which created the inspiring labyrinth at the center of the school. Almost simultaneously, through the generosity of Gregory Bolger, the Bolger Performing Arts Center transformed Dever Gym into an impressive new space for theater and music performance. Just this year, Lawrence H. Hyde has made the Hyde Center for Global Education a reality. Now with the generous gift of Pat Cadigan, Cadigan Hall, a 28,000 square foot arts and recreation center housing a new gym, 3 dedicated arts classrooms, a music and chorus room, as well as a lecture hall, has added its distinctive facade to BC High's new orientation on the Bay. Just as the original BC High was a manifestation of Catholic immigrants establishing their claim to the rights and opportunities of the New World, the addition of Cadigan Hall makes manifest BC High's commitment to serve the needs of the Archdiocese, the Society of Jesus, and the wider community of Boston. Ignatius and his first companions understood the importance of reaching out to people on the frontiers, of reconciling those who were estranged in any way. Ignatius sent Jesuits to the frontiers, to the New World. He sent Xavier to the Indies. He also wanted Jesuits to cross other types of frontiers between rich and poor, between educated and unlearned. The recent international colloquium hosted by BC High echoes the energy and vision which characterized its founding. Once an outpost and gateway to a promising future for the newly arrived, the school has increasingly joined with the Society of Jesus' larger mission of bringing people of many cultures together, sharing knowledge, and learning from one another. The colloquium, the first of its kind ever held, brought together leaders of more than 200 Jesuit secondary schools from 60 countries to share ideas, opening yet another doorway and new vistas of opportunity in BC High's ongoing endeavor to graduate young men of competence, conscience, and compassion. At this groundbreaking event, participants reaffirmed old bonds of affection and imagined new ways to connect with one another for the betterment of all our students. They came from all over the world.
So I'm Chiesa Chimanda from the Zimbabwe province.
Sono Franco Beneduce, sono Jesuita della provincia d'Italia.
Soy Bergeni Rodríguez Arevalo del Colegio Santa Luisa en Bogotá, Colombia.
My name is John Galdes. I'm from Malta.
District of Surguja in India.
Bolivia, de La Paz, Bolivia.
Medellín, Colombia.
Provincia de España.
Micronesia.
China, Macau.
However, over the many years BC High has been a part of Boston, it is the human element, the human bonds that bridge our past and present and lead us into the future. The special relationships that develop in a student's struggle toward adulthood define the lasting attachments so many of our graduates feel for the brick and mortar of Morsi Boulevard. The forged ties of teacher and student, coach and player, mentor and learner last a lifetime. The commitment of our graduates to the teachers who prodded them towards realizing their potential and the good they could create in the world has served as the foundation of our present and will see us into a future where any young man hoping to come to BC High can make a place for himself in the world. Faithful to its Jesuit heritage and urban roots, BC High's goal today is to graduate young men confident in their ability to sit with people from cultures far different than their own, both in our own multicultural city and beyond the borders of our country. Exposed to formative experiences of cross-cultural community by their local community service, on international exchanges and immersion trips, BC High students will be prepared to find their rightful places in their work for the common good in the world that is emerging. Looking back at the history of the school as a place for those who were newly arrived and newly rising, of a school for boys who had to make their way in an unfamiliar and sometimes hostile nation, and in the process prove their worthiness. Today's graduates continue to live out Father McElroy's vision of a school which can make a difference in the lives of its students, and whose students can make a difference in the world.